Good evening, everyone. Father Joshua here from St. Albert the Great Parish, and tonight we're going to be talking about the saints St. Benedict and St. Scholastica, twin siblings, twin brother and sister, who are very famous for their um, contribution to the life of the monastic orders and of the life of all of the religious orders that we have still to this day. Not that they were the founders of many orders, of course. Benedict founded the Order of Saint Benedict that we still have here in this diocese, and Saint Scholastica lived with a community of nuns not too far away from there. But their influence on the lifestyle and what we call the rule of life that governs these different communities has been very influential even to this day. So Saint Benedict and Saint Scholastica, twins, were born in the year 480, and they are really considered to be the tail end of the late patristics period. So that's the tail end of the early church years, and so they were contributing to the life of the Christian world at this time. And Benedict really founded what we call he wrote what we call the Rule of Saint Benedict. And a rule of life is literally the rules, the way, the style of living that the community of Saint Benedict still follows to this day. And that writing down of all of the ways of living, of interacting, and not just the rules themselves, but really the reasons and the explanations, the theological understandings, and all of the spirituality of those rules is a huge, he's the first monk, the first order to really write out all of these things in a clear and distinct way, which influences the way that every order is composed after that, because people who were creating new orders or who were inspired to bring together men and women of different communities into a singular community, these people were searching for, they were trying to distinguish themselves from the average lay person in some way. They had to live by a different standard, by a different way of life. They had to come up with the charisms that they were being called to live out, the gifts of their order that they were called to be bringing to the world in a particular way. So this Rule of Saint Benedict is really this foundational document that is the inspiration in the way that many communities now lay out their rule of life by explaining what they are doing that is distinct from any other Christian community, and to explain the theological and spiritual reasons for behaving in that way. So Benedict really is a fundamental person in the way that we have religious orders. So he is highly regarded not just within the Benedictine order, but really throughout the church because of this way of life that he put down for his community. Saint Scholastica is, as I said, his twin sister, has a little bit more, shall we say, mystery about her. There is some concern about whether or not she lived the way that she was described, or that there's not a ton of documentation about her life. So much of what we have about her life is more on the side of hearsay or of rumor. But we do know that from the book, St. Gregory the Great, Pope, was really the main citation for St. Scholastica's life. So, in his book, The Dialogues, he mentions St. Scholastica and St. Benedict's life together. They lived in a monastery and a convent not too far from each other, and often those two communities would get together to discuss things in an area between the two, in a garden between the two the monastery and the convent. And so they would spend much time together, Benedict and Scholastica. They would discuss and pray together. They would talk about theology and spirituality, and they would pray and worship and go to Mass together and do all of those types of things. But there was a pretty distinct rule that Benedict placed out in his rule, that they were to be behind the walls of their monastery and convent before a certain time of evening. So they were not allowed to stay overnight. Of course, that's still a rule in convents and monasteries today, that you're not allowed to have guests overnight, in your space or in your rooms, of course, for obvious reasons. But but Benedict and Scholastica, brother and sister, twins, and Scholastica was on her deathbed, and Benedict had come to see her, and he was about to leave for the evening, and Scholastica reportedly asked him to stay overnight, and Benedict, being the saintly and godly man that he was, said that he wasn't allowed to break the rule even for his dying sister. So he was trying to live out the life that he was called to by the Lord. And so the story is that Scholastica, on her deathbed, prayed for Benedict to be forced to stay, and the Lord answered her by causing the story is that out of a clear sky, the heavens opened up and they poured down rain and heavy winds, and a turbulent storm came out of nowhere, and Benedict was forced he was not able to leave the convent. So for the first time in their adult lives, Benedict and Scholastica were able to remain together for an entire evening. And then within a few days of that time, Scholastica passed on to the Lord. So there is this it's kind of a beautiful story that is about the power of love and the power of siblings, that the Lord would desire so deeply for them to be able to spend time together before before Scholastica passed away, that Benedict would be forced to even to go beyond what his rule had dictated for him, what the rule that the Lord had set out for him dictated, so that he would have to stay with his sister, and that he would do it in a clear conscience, because he had refused and then was forced. So there is a clear conscience there. He didn't have a choice in what he was doing. So there is just a lot of really beautiful things to learn from the life of St. Benedict, from the life of St. Scholastica, and to understand about this relationship of brothers and sisters, of siblings in the Lord. Not just our physical siblings, of course, we should have good and healthy relationships with them, but with our spiritual brothers and sisters as well, coming to know and to understand them, and to try to support one another, to meet each other in the garden of our lives, and to, in that space, bring about a relationship with the Lord, to encourage one another in faith and hope and love, just as Benedict and Scholastica did. If you're interested in reading anything by St. Benedict, you can certainly find the Rule of St. Benedict on Amazon or online, and I'm sure you could find a copy of the Dialogues by St. Gregory the Great, who discusses all of the lives of many saints, and the lives of St. Benedict and Scholastica take a somewhat prominent role in there. So if you're looking for more information on them, you are welcome to find it there. And as I bring up these saints today, because tomorrow is this feast of St. Benedict. So although we're not going to be celebrating it at Sunday Mass in the evening, because Sundays trump any other feast day, we will be, if you are interested, you can pray to St. Benedict or with St. Benedict in the morning with the Office of Readings. So I hope you have a wonderful evening, and God bless you all. Thank you.